There you go.
Good morning, ladies. This is a do-it-yourself part. Up until this point, we've watched Sister Monique dance. We've heard Sister Sabrina tell us a little bit about the 3 Ds and the 4 Ps. We've heard Sister Lakeisha tell us about looking back and appreciating where we've been, knowing that we can go forward. Now it's time for us to do some writing. You're going to need at least one piece of paper and at least a pen. So will you pull that out and be prepared to think about where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. To get us focused and looking in, would like for you to just repeat these words as we look at the Psalm 46. I'm going to get rid of this so we can do it. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know that I. Be still and know that. Be still and know.
That's good.
Be still and be still. Be centered in Christ. As we go forward today, we're going to look at ways that writing can help us reflect and select and write. We're going to do some experimentation and reflection with symbols and personal adjectives. But as Sister Annette mentioned, I'm an educator, a writer, and some people want to know, well, how do you go about writing and what good is it going to do me? Well, writing is a process. The step one is brainstorming for ideas. What am I going to write about? Step two is organizing those ideas and just doing some free writing. Sister Lakeisha talked about keeping notes about things that have happened to us in our past. That's one way of free writing. But eventually we're going to want to draft and put those ideas in a form for a beta reading, for someone else to read and give us feedback. We're going to do some revising based on that feedback. We're going to look for a second round of readers to help us know whether we are writing for our target audience, fulfilling our purpose. Sister Sabrina mentioned about the idea of people. Who are writing for? What is our message? And so after we get these rounds of feedback, we're going to revise and repeat until it's ready. Then, only then, we need to spend time editing and getting we call it the mugs, the mechanics, the usage, the grammar, and the spelling. And eventually, we'll publish it for public consumption. But that's not our role today. Our goal today is to explore, explain, and expand a little bit of what we know about ourselves. So we'll only have time today for some brainstorming, some drafting, and maybe a little feedback. So let's get started. To become steadfast and unmovable, one way is to look back to see where the Lord has brought us. Looking back sometimes prepares us to move forward. So we'll brainstorm and explore with symbols and colors, composing a brief summary of our past, our present, and then consider our vision for the future. So Take out a sheet of paper. Print your name at the top of the paper in block letters. Big block letters. We're going to come back to this. And then fold your paper into thirds so that you'll have 3 wide columns. Okay. When you're ready, hold your 3 wide columns up and I'll be able to see that everybody's ready. Okay. All right. Good. Okay. Write your name across the top, big block letters. All right. I'm going to ask those of you who can, will you put your video on so I can see, so I can tell when people are ready? If it's not convenient for you to do so, leave it off. But this is the way I know it's time to go on. All right. I ask you, if you will, to put your video on so that I can see when you're ready. Okay. All right. On the top of that paper, and each of these columns, write past, present, future. And then add these sentence stems. For the past, 21 years ago, I was. Today, I am something within the last 14 days, 14 weeks, or 14 months. It's your choice. We're just using multiples of 7. 21 years ago, 14 days, weeks, or months ago. And then in 7 years, I hope, I expect, or I want to be. Past, present, future. Okay. We're going to look now, try to close this off, at some geometric shapes. I'm going to ask you to consider what these shapes could mean if we're going to symbolize a time in our lives. What do these shapes suggest about relationships? You think about a circle, a square, a rectangle, a parallelogram, a hexagram, an oval, a parallelogram facing forward, a star, an octagon, a rhombus. Choose a shape. Now, add to your notes in those columns a geometric shape that symbolizes each of those 3 periods. 21 years ago, what shape would you say represents that period? 14 months or weeks ago, what shape would you say represents that period for you? 7 years from now, what shape could symbolize that period for you? Okay. Let's look at what some people have written in the chat. Someone has written, I only see one right now. I'll give you a couple more minutes. I'll put it back up. Can you unmute for just a moment so people can tell us what they're...
You want me to unmute or you want others
I want to unmute so that others can tell us a little bit about
okay. So how many would you like to share? Something.
4.
Okay. So if 4 of you would like to share, please feel free to unmute at this time.
What is positive or negative about any of these shapes? Person number 1.
Who is person number 1?
Whoever speaks first.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Who said the circle?
I did.
Okay.
I'm 21 years ago. I guess I chose a circle because I was feeling like I was going in a circle. I was going in circles because no purpose, not knowing exactly what my purpose was, and wasn't operating in my purpose and seeking. So I'm going in circles, looking. I'm just going in a circle.
Okay. Someone else?
I like looking at the number 2. And I believe it, and how it's shaped, when you talk about like number 2, I felt like that was a sign of saying that my beginning has a future and it's evolving, so it's continuing. So I'm like, oh yeah, I like this shape because I can continue on with this, and it's big and it's round. It's not round, excuse me, big, and it's pretty wide, where I have more time to write on it, more time to create.
Okay. One more person?
I chose the circle because for me, the circle meant at that time I was complete. But then I chose the octagon as a negative because 14 years later, my life was array. Everything was going in different directions. Nothing fit anymore.
Look at the star. Somebody, What's a positive image of a star?
Oh, the red carpet. That's how I think of it. I guess that's my vision. I know, that I'm going to be on the red carpet, and all of you too. We're going to be on there talking about just what, God was doing. It's like, wow, why is your life so different now? And it's like, yeah, it's different because of God. God has been doing amazing things for me. So I'm excited to tell that story.
Okay.
When Miss Hannah, when I think about the star, I think about the ability to have the power to move in many different areas, different directions. And I always see God as the center of everything, but He allows me to do many different things at different times.
Okay. Just take a moment, pretend you are in the middle of that circle. You're standing here. You could see that circle as opportunities to go in different directions, or you could see that being in the middle of the star of things pulling you in so many directions, you don't know what to do. And so what I guess I'm saying here is when we're looking at these shapes, they can have positive or negative connotations. And what we're doing now is just taking a little time to review those. Okay, want to go on? Let's look at the way colors can symbolize our lives. Note some of the positive and negative words linked to colors. I'm going to play this, just scroll through, read below. Okay. Now add color to your column. You can have one or more colors. For 21 years ago, if you had to say your life was a color, what would it be? "14 days, weeks, or months ago, what color?" "7 years from now, what color?" So in your columns now, you should have a shape and a color. I'm going to show what it could look like. For my past, I chose a square. I colored it red. And this is a sentence I wrote. 21 years ago or more, I was feeling loved, but sometimes boxed in by commitments to my husband, my children, my career, my church, and my community. So 21 years ago or more, I had both positive and negative feelings about where I was. Loved, yes, boxed in sometimes. Sometimes the red represented the love I felt. Sometimes it was the reaction to my temper 21 years ago. We're going to take a break now, but during this time, I'm going to ask you to fill in the columns with just one sentence based on what you discovered as you were considering your past, 21 or more years ago, your present, what you hope for the future. One sentence, each column, taking into consideration the color and the geometric shape. And we'll come back in 5 minutes and move on.
Miss Anna.
Yes, ma'am.
Would you be willing to put your share back up and leave the screen on so that they can see the 3 areas that they need to be filling in?
Not a problem at all.
Thank you. Yes. Everybody, complete this and we'll be back in at about 5, maybe 6 minutes at the most. Once you get your bathroom running, all right? All right, well, our break time is up, and Miss Anna can unmute and get back to business.
Well, you know it was coming. It's sharing time. Just a couple of volunteers of what you are noticing as you are looking inside and considering shapes. I'll go first. I already told you how I looked at my past and had a square where I was considering how I was trying to balance my time with my husband, my children, my career, and my church and community. I put them together because I happen to have grown up in a church that we got out of the salt box. Church and community were the same thing. We had to do outside what we were taught to do inside. However, as I looked on, I used a rectangle, and I was trying to get about the same total exterior, but at this time, my children were older. My career, I'm retired now, but I still had my husband and my church and community, so I had more time to spend with them. The sentence I wrote: today I have more time for my husband, 54 years now. Blue is the color I chose because I'm feeling a little calmer than I was in those early years, but sometimes a little sadder because my children are grown. My youngest son died about 15 years ago, but I'm retired now from my career, but that gives me more time for my husband and for my community. And so I have those lines larger. Moving on. For my future, I used a parallelogram, but you see I have it tilting forward. And I used the color purple, because as you heard from our speakers this morning, we really are a composition of our past and our present. And those of you who know a little bit about art know when you mix red and blue, you get purple. And so I was sort of being fancy schmancy and using purple. But in 7 years, I want to be more forward looking. And as a child of the king, remember purple is a royal color, at my age, I may be in heaven. So I've chosen a blend of red and blue to make royal purple to symbolize my expectation, not necessarily in 7 years, but in the future. So looking at my past, a red square, locked in, loved, furious sometimes, but it worked. My present, a little more calm, but still the same issues, the same demands on my time outside myself, my husband, my children, my career, my church, and my community. And in the future, I hope to God that I continue, have my husband at my side, my children, they still don't live in town, but we're in touch. My career is now online mentoring and teaching, and always, ever, my church and my community. Could we have 2 of you share now? If you want to just hold your thing up, what you drew or whatever, so that we can see it, that you can point it out.
How would you? We just need 2 people. Come on. Unmute and come on. Come on.
Okay. Miss Anna?
Yes?
Okay.
Who is this?
This is Keisha.
Okay.
Keisha. Okay. So let me try to bring it in closer as possible. So I wrote it. So in my past, pretty much at 0 to 21 years, I pretty much felt like a circle. I felt like the process, just understanding everything. Mind you, I'm a kid. I'm pretty much doing everything that I was told to do. What my parents told me what was right. So I didn't really have a lot going on as a kid. However, when I went into grade school, that's when that was altered. That's when I began to see what others were living, and they weren't living the same thing I was living. So I was confused. I just felt like I was confused. I felt like, like I said before, like maybe I was wrong or they were wrong. I was mad. I was just mad when I was a kid. I just didn't understand life. I would blame my parents. You did this. You didn't understand what to do. Why am I living this way? Because everybody else doesn't understand me.
Okay.
So my present, definitely now today is different. I was able to turn, that poverty mindset into prosperity. So I know what to teach, my coaches. I know to teach others who didn't find their gifts. I know how to bring them aboard, understanding that process. So my process was the long rectangle.
Okay.
I believe that was soaring and still evolving, still moving forward, still growing. So that's what I see in myself. That's what I saw when I went to college, military. That's what I was able to understand other perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
It's not their fault. They take what they can. Like my parents said, hey, I'm giving you this education. This is all I know. And all they know. So I was at ease. I really was, not as vulnerable because of the education. So I didn't blame others anymore. So
Okay.
I was healed from that. Yes.
Lakeisha, I'm going to ask you to do two things and we're going to give time for another speaker.
Okay.
Number one, what color did you use for the early years?
Oh, wow. So the early years, I was blue.
Okay.
Pretty much my favorite color.
Middle years?
Middle years, it was still blue, but it kind of was still kind of a little bit of the white.
Okay.
So I was calmer. I was calmer then. I was a little bit more clarity, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you. One other person? I want to honor the next person. We've got one more step to go with this. That's why I asked you to write your name on the top. Do we have one more person to be willing to share a couple of the colors you chose and the shapes you chose?
We have one more person?
Not a problem.
Okay.
This is personal. And for some of us, what we're seeing is surprising us, and we're just not ready to share it this time, or we need a little more time to process. We have one more step. Go back to the top of your sheet, and we're going to look at your name and ways you can choose adjectives that begin with your name. Okay. So at the top of your paper, circle all the different letters in your names. Now, down the side of your paper, list those letters in alphabetical order. I know this is going to be a challenge for some of us. Alphabetical order. So, this is my name. These are the different letters in my name, and I have them listed here in alphabetical order. I'm going to show you some adjectives. And as we look at this list of adjectives, I want you to select at least one adjective that begins with the same letter as the letters you've listed on the side of your paper. We're going to show it about 3 times so that you'll have a chance to select adjectives that you could use in your writing to describe your past, your present, your future. take a look one more time. You should have at least 7 adjectives, at least 1 for each different letter in your name. Because I was trying to be honoring all 26 letters of the alphabet, I added the ones for X. I don't know if anyone has X's in their name, but I also think each new learning session should teach us something new. And for X, you have xenophobic, someone who loves, is afraid of foreign things, but xenophilic is someone who loves foreign things. Xenial is someone who is happy, and xeric is someone who enjoys dry weather. But that's just an aside for now. I want to take these 7 adjectives and see how we would use those in our writing to describe those seasons in our name, in our lives. For example, with mine, for an A, I was ambitious. I'll wait till they'll come. I chose a positive and a negative for each one of them. A, I was ambitious in terms of my career goals, but I was a little anxious for those years that I had to put my career on hold. B, I was bossy, but I was trying to be benevolent, and I opened my home for Bible study for other mothers who had small children. I was efficient when we were saving for our home, but later in life, when my son died, I was angry. He was serving in the Navy. He was found dead in his apartment, and no one ever found out what happened. They just shipped his body home. L, I loved teaching, but later on I was lonely because my children lived far away. In my early years, I felt manipulated by the legalism of the church. Do this, do that. But as I began to study the Bible, I became more motivated. O, overwhelmed. We lived and worked in 5 different states. Every state, I had to get new credentials for teaching. But I became optimistic because the Lord opened ways for me to get that. My 2 R's were the restlessness and the resilience. God helped us to adjust to all of those moves. God helped us to adjust to the death of our son. I'm still married, 54 years, celebrated in December, and I'm still loving it. So, as we close out this time, we're going to ask you to consider ways that you could use what we have explored today, where you can draft your own story. You can put it together in words. Because of our time, we're not going to be able to do the writing today, but sometime after this, electronically or physically on paper, write. We're not going to have the sharing time today, but if we were, we would ask you to consider ways that you would revise your writing, to explain, to expand, to exchange and rearrange, to expunge and enliven the writing that you write as you explore your past, your present, and your future.